Okay, it's 7:31 p.m. We are going to begin this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education. I'm going to ask everyone at this time to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Here.
Mr. Conti?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Here.
Dr. Alati?
Here.
You have a quorum.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and space posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on the Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. This regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education will be held as scheduled in the cafeteria at Rutherford High School. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order 152, limiting indoor gatherings to the lesser of 25 people or 25% of the room's capacity, however, this meeting will also be conducted utilizing video conferencing as allowed by the Open Public Meetings Act NJSA 10:4-6 as amended by PL 2020 C11. As only a limited number of members of the public will be able to attend the meeting in person, and members of the public are encouraged to participate by logging on to a video recording. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on public meetings and then videos. Okay, we're going to start with minutes approval. We have two sets of minutes that are in your packets. We have the regular meeting minutes from October 5th, 2020, and executive session minutes from October 5th, 2020 as well. Any comments about those? Hearing none, we'll ask that those are entered. And now we're very excited to welcome a student representative with us today. So we want to welcome you and really appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening and telling us a little bit about what's going on at the high school. So if you want to introduce yourself, talking to the mic, and we appreciate you being here.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Raj Parikh. I will be your student rep for this year. So to start off, the student council so far has fundraised money for breast cancer awareness by selling pins. And last weekend, this senior members of student council also had a Zoom meeting to talk about fundraising money for the yearbooks and caps and gowns. So the two things we have planned so far is a wreath fundraiser for Christmas. So we're going to sell wreaths to teachers and students and family members to help raise money since we don't have a fashion show this year. Another thing we're going to do is do baby pictures for yearbooks, as previously we've done it all throughout the past 10 years or so. And we're going to continue with that. And also with clubs, we have started tutorings for National Honor Society and Spanish Club, starting this week via Zoom between 1:30 to 3. So it allows student athletes to also do Zoom and be able to participate in the sports. Other stuff that clubs have done is we are fundraising money and donating food cans for those that need for Thanksgiving and Christmas, such as Spanish Club. We're also creating shoe boxes, and where we will put necessary items for kids, such as books, toothbrushes, soap, for kids that need it, for kids in need. For sports have been social distancing quite well this year, and we're hoping for future seasons to happen like this, because so far no cases or violations of the COVID guidelines have happened, which is quite well. And since I was a student who both did virtual and hybrid learning for the past week or so, I understand both viewpoints of how students work like that. And for me especially, I see the benefits of both, and it depends as you as a student for which one you would prefer, as more people that like individually like to learn would choose virtual, while those who need like that classroom setting to learn chose hybrid learning, which helps students actually work better because now you have like choice to choose your own preferences, and it's great to see that in the school this year. Other clubs have been meeting via Zoom as well, so no club has like been inactive since from like last year to this year. So it's great to see like students keep going. That would be it.
Thank you. Well, I want to start by saying that typically if we were not in a pandemic, we wouldn't be wearing masks and you'd see us smiling because we're so appreciative to have a student here to give their perspective on how things are going at the high school. So we are really appreciative that you're here and able to give this perspective. Do any board members have any comments or questions that they want to ask Raj? Mr. Mazzone?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for being a part of our board and to welcome you.
Thank you for having me. Forward to you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Glad to see you. Thank you.
If I could add one thing, there was a idea generated by the yearbook advisor, Ms. Grillo, and Mr. DeBarry, the assistant principal, to try to look at some of the things that normally go in the yearbook that may or may not be happening this year, haven't happened yet, like, pep rallies and homecoming dances and parades and things like that, and to try to have the students go throughout the building with pictures to capture what schools like, high school life is like in 2020. And we're going to be putting out a news release on that, our communications group, with some of the pictures. And it really just, I think is a great idea for a project to show some of the, the highs and the lows, what's lost, what's gained, what's replicating, what's replacing, what's, going on in the building. So I already saw some of the first pictures, and I think it's a good idea, and it'll be a way to get, a memory, but also a document. The yearbooks, when we keep them in my office and in Mr. Kelly's office and Mr. Morano's office, they're not just a memory book. They're often a historical reference point. We go back in years and say, what happened that year or that year, we use it. So this is certainly a different year, and I think it's great that the yearbook advisor and yearbook staff and Mr. DeBarry came up with this idea to try to really capture what's going on in the building. And to echo the welcome, it's I know the board likes to hear, the public likes to hear what's going on in the high school and on a variety of activities. Sometimes we hear about the one or two, but you did a good job of covering so many of them tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to echo everyone's appreciation and welcome for you, and we look forward to hearing everything that you'll be able to provide us. I think more than ever, it's really helpful for us as a board to hear what the student experience is, 'cause these are obviously different times. So appreciate everything that you've mentioned. Hearing no other comments from the board, I will say that you are welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. We also recognize that you may have work you need to do and things to study for, so it is up to you. If you need to go, that is all good. And want to thank you again for coming this evening.
Thank you for having me. I got college stuff to do.
Yes, I can relate.
See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, before I turn it over to Rachel Tiedemann from PSA, I just wanted to show you, this is the second place award that we received for marketing and branding for the 1R. And this is the first place award for the special interest publication for the newsletter that went out ahead of the referendum. If we were sitting closer, I'd pass it around, but I'll leave them up here. And if you want to look at them before you leave tonight, they're here. But I thank Mr. Kelly for attending the virtual awards, and thank everyone who contributed to the campaign. Certainly, you know, that the support we had from the community in developing the 1R, you know, John Procero and the people that worked on the project, we really appreciate that. So they're up here. At the end of discussion about the buildings, I'll have a couple of other comments on other items in terms of going on in the district. But I'll turn it over to Rachel Tiedemann to walk us through some updates from the last presentation. I guess we should move, right? So, show you.
So thank you all for having us here with you guys again, and we will go over a couple of projects you guys had some additional questions about. We will start with the Pierpont. We'll look at a Union Edition, and then the high school Mortimer wing. At Pierpont, as we had discussed before, this is the first floor plan. It is hard to see in this slideshow, but it shows it in broken out in phases. The multi-purpose room is the first phase. The second phase is the renovation, and then the third phase is the classroom addition. This is the first phase, which is the gymnasium. The second phase, I said that backwards there. The second phase is the classroom addition. But actually, the third phase, which you'll see in the orange, precedes the second phase. This is the second floor, showing the connection and how everything will occur as it's tied together. Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question. Can you go back one slide there?
Yep.
So when we
Just waiting for it. Hold on one second.
copy that.
Okay, there you
So
go.
the bottom left there, what is that? Is that a big classroom, or is that just an open ceiling over the gym?
Over the gymnasium, it is just an open ceiling.
Okay.
There is, in order to get the height for the sports, it is about a 2.5 or a 1.5 story space with a structure above it.
Got it. And is
Okay.
there, so that hallway there's a hallway at the end there, and you got a couple classrooms.
Sure.
Is that a scoreboard on there, or is there windows into the gym?
No, that is, you are correct, that is a hallway, and there are classrooms up on that level right there. There are no windows into the gym in that, along that facade.
Okay.
That, what you're seeing there is just a built-out area, I believe, for the backboard.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions before I move on? Go ahead.
What is the white rectangle?
Down there is where the mechanical equipment will be housed. It is not inside the building, it is outside the building. Go ahead.
Rachel, is there any slide, I see a site plan, which is back a few, but is there any site plan that shows like the border to the street?
So I do know that was one of the questions. That is not one of the slides that we have. But I do know, I brought one of the plans with me. We don't have it in presentation format, but I do have a construction plan that shows Lincoln Avenue and Van Ness Avenue, if you wanted to look at it. Go ahead.
Okay, just to be clear, on the first floor plan, the new addition classrooms, they connect to those outside, the outside classrooms, right?
Yes. So if you look here in this diagram right here, you will see that there is blue outside of the classroom addition, and that is a covered canopy that connects it to those other classrooms that are outside. So we're connecting to, I think there's 4 classrooms there, and then the hallway connects back to the other building too.
So a covered canopy, not a enclosed area.
Correct, it's a covered canopy.
So
Go ahead.
where are the existing portables?
Where are the existing?
Or not portables, what, I don't know what they're called,
Oh.
satellite buildings or,
So Jack is actually sitting closest to them. They are grade area. Yep, he's looked at these drawings too much. They're right there. Yep. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yep.
Okay, and this is portable, there's the color canopy out, and the connection to the main building.
Yep, that's correct. I got it right there. Does anybody else have a
So when
question?
we look at that, is there a, so, okay, I can see where the streets are now.
Mhm.
That plan- The ground plan that you just passed out is definitely very helpful with that. On the left side of the screen there, which I guess you guys are calling as the west side,
It is west-southwest.
okay. Is that a terrace?
It is not a terrace. There is a sidewalk that goes around the full building that is at the same level as the gymnasium for egress.
Okay. Is that at street level? I couldn't quite see
It's
that.
not at street level. There are stairs and ramps down from there.
Got it, okay.
You guys just raise your hand and I'd be happy to ask more questions.
As we grill you.
It's okay. Hopefully I have some answers. This shows again, the renovation space of the cafeteria. And yes, the west elevation and the north elevation is what you will see on the following slides. These are just black and white. We have not done any renderings of these yet.
Rachel, can we go back to the, right, I just want to make a point on the brick on the building that you see there. There's two brick colors currently appear upon. One from the building, well, I won't say the original, but pretty much the original building, and one from the 1980 addition. So we went out with bricks to try to match the best we can.
Yes.
We kind of have something that pretty much matches both. Actually, a little closer to the 1980, I think, to the older one, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at the very bottom of that picture behind the bushes, you'll see that there's a darker brick that goes around the building.
Yeah, there's a darker base right below the bushes, like Jack is saying. It is hard to see in this picture, but the new addition does have 2 different tones of brick.
Right. So if you go to the next slide, and I realize this is a drawing, it's not in color. The original design, which is on the bottom,
Correct.
was pretty much a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split of the dark brick and light brick, which was not consistent with the rest of the building. So one of the things, I just wanted to point that out. If you go up to the revision, you'll see that the dark brick is now back to being very low on the base to match the rest of the building.
The dark brick is also going to be used at the main entrance
Right.
too. So it is lower. It sits below the sill or at the sill of the lowest window. So it's right along this line here and then the base. And then the entrance.
And I think if you look at the paper copy, which Mr. Kelly left for you, you can see the different shading of the drawing, even though it's not the tan and the brown.
Go ahead. You have a question?
so So in that drawing, in the paper version that we're looking at, there's a significant difference between the top, the modified and the original design in the sort of, not just the shading, but it looks like in the definition somehow,
Yes.
like line by line.
Right.
So is that just the picture quality, or is there an actual difference?
So there are some differences. I'm going to switch to the next slide, or see if this, okay. So at the top, one of the things that we wanted to do at the cornice of the building is we wanted to, or the parapet of the building, we wanted to give it some definition. And one of the requests was just to give it a heavier top, you know? So we did some modifications to the parapet. We have a soldier course that is running there. We have some brick that is going to be recessed now. So you'll see some heavier lines in there. You are correct, there are some heavier lines.
But only at the top?
Not just at the top. So at the sill where the windows are, there is a brick sill there along with a bull nose as we change from one color to another. So the bull nose will be similar to this. This is going to be similar to the recessed brick at the top of the parapet. And then when you have the windows, you will also see a soldier course along the top of the windows now too.
Soldier course means that they're turned.
Yes,
vertically.
they're turned vertically.
So, but in the picture, and again, I don't know if I'm looking, because this picture looks very different than that on the screen, but there looks to be definition running horizontally consistently throughout the entire facade.
I think that's a product of the picture,
Yeah, I think that might just have to do with the print.
because the changes of the design were at the roof, the windows, around the windows, around the door entrance. But I see what you're saying, Sally. It looks like a deeper shade or something.
Right.
But
I see the detail around the windows and the detail at the top, and I understand the.
Yeah, there's
sort of
not,
inlaid row.
other than the color
Okay.
change, there's really not supposed to be anything else running horizontally.
Okay.
If we don't see the darker brick in the front, why are we including making the rest of the building darker?
Only, so you don't see it at the front on the image that we showed you. If you go and walk around the building, you will see the darker
yeah, it's
brick as you walk around the building.
around the building. It's there. The front, the picture had a bush in front of it, so you don't see it. But around the building, that's pretty consistent with the entire building. That you have the lower.
Still going to be the yellow tone?
It is going to be a lighter yellower tone,
It's
closer
going to
to
match.
what you have.
I said it was pretty much a direct match, and I don't remember whether it was the 80 or the 20 building, but it was a direct match and pretty close to the other.
Go ahead.
So with the changes in the windows and stuff like that?
Right.
Has anything been ordered? Is there any delay?
So right now, we're going to be making the modifications to these windows. We will request a proposed change order.
Yep.
So we will see the amount and see how it'll affect the budget. And then we will talk to Joe and Jack and the rest of the team before we proceed with any of these changes. The increase to the window is just the height. There is no change in the width of the windows. So we're increasing the height. We are adding a thicker mullion rather than just the simple window frame. We're actually adding a mullion in there. And I think we went from 4-foot to 6-foot high windows. So we will see a change in price for that, though.
But my question is, has the construction company already ordered the windows?
They have not.
They have not.
I
Okay,
can
good.
confirm
So
they
we-
have
so we
not.
get saved from a back.
Yes.
Great. Okay, that's important. And then as far as, is there any different lead time as far as the windows, anything like that? Is there anything?
Right now, there is no difference from what we had to what we are going to request.
Okay. And when so by the next board meeting, we should see that change order for approval?
I can't guarantee that because we have to deal with subcontractors, general contractors, and vendors. But
Okay.
we will work with the district to get a price.
Cool, thank you.
Go ahead.
In the new gym, where was the stage?
Let me go back.
Hard to see.
So I'm getting there. Okay. So the stage is easiest to see. It is right here. Did you see that? It's on this side over here. That is your stage.
If you go to the next one with the bleachers, so the
Yep.
stage would be, where's the one that had the bleachers in it? I saw a bleacher somewhere, I thought, no? Yeah.
There we
There's not a
go.
fly system
The,
over
st-
that
the,
stage,
sta-
is
the
there?
stage will be opposite the bleachers. So it'll be very much like you see in Washington and Lincoln.
So we had a question here about a fly system. This does not have a big theatrical performance fly system. There is a smaller fly system that is in place. So the height behind, is usually 30, 40 feet for a theatrical fly system. This was not designed for a theatrical, but we do have a fly system there. We do have lighting systems there. It was actually an alternate that we bid, so we were able to include those systems in our scope of work.
And just for, again, everybody's, when you're involved in something, you assume sometimes everybody knows what goes on. These decisions about what type of theatrical apparatus to put were made with meetings with the principal, the assistant principal, the supervisor of the arts, the theater teacher, the choir teacher. I mean, none of these are unilaterally made. Now, obviously, there comes through where you say, okay, you want this, but we can't, it'll bust the budget, or it wouldn't fit in the space, but it was a effort of all those people involved in the discussion.
Right, and like I said, we knew that it was a desire of the district, so we did include it as an alternate, and we were able to accept it.
And each of the gyms, for example, Mr. Frazier is brought in to talk about what do you foresee the gym being used in terms of potential high school use? What would you prefer in terms of what type of volleyball setup, what type of basketball setup and the like? So again, all of the input that came into these designs came from not just my office or Joe's or the principal's office, but from the person who's responsible for that area as a supervisor or teacher.
Go ahead. I see.
Is it large enough for high school?
It is a high school size
Yes.
gymnasium, yes.
And I think you said, in the last meeting, you said there's a roll down and there's multiple other.
Yes.
You have a hoop at either end and then 4 smaller hoops?
Correct.
Awesome, okay. Couldn't remember if it was this gym or the other gym.
Yep. It's actually both of them.
Even better.
So
Go ahead.
back to the north elevation page, I guess that's page 12.
Sure. Let me
Um,
just change.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking.
And
for-
this is the west elevation? That's what you're looking
No,
at?
I'm looking at the north, the one with
Oh.
the brick pictures.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
The one with the brick.
Oh, sorry.
So the portion of the building that is the darker brick,
Yes?
is that stepped out from the building?
It is not stepped out from the building. What we did is included a bullnose, so you will get a defined edge there, and you will see a shadow line.
Okay, a bullnose meaning that's the upper
Yep.
left-hand picture?
If you look on this, it's the upper left-hand picture here.
So you don't have that on the rest of the building?
There is
The-
just the bullnose at the sill at the lower window. And the rest of the windows do have a brick sill, but we don't have a bullnose that goes around for the whole, as you move up the building. The sill is not continuous at the second floor. There's no bullnose at the second floor.
Yeah, okay, I guess I had misunderstood. So the bullnose is only in that one section that's dark? And the
Correct.
rest of the roof line does not have the bullnose?
That is correct. The roofline parapet, we have a metal parapet, we have a soldier course, and we have a brick recessed. Actually, I have 2 brick recesses just to get some extra depth and shadow lines in there.
Okay, is that picture up here or no?
Yep, on the top right here, you can see the recessed brick, which will be something similar to what we use at the parapet.
But this is at the very top of the building.
It is close to the top of the building. Actually, if you're looking at this image here, you'll see the metal parapet, and then we have a soldier course, so you have the vertical brick turned,
Yeah.
and then you have a recessed brick, then you have 2 rows of your typical modular brick, and then you have another recessed brick.
Yeah. I guess I'm confused about what's on top of it, because I don't think any of the photos depict what the roof
We
line-
don't have a picture of the metal edge. It's a detail that we still need to develop.
Okay.
It's different than what was in the original design.
I see. But that is where the bullnose is going to go. for the
No,
dark-
the
no.
bullnose is not at the top of the building. The bullnose is only at the window sill at the bottom, down here. Yeah, one of the other things that we're going to be doing is removing some of the leaders that you see, the vertical leaders for the rain. I believe, if I am correct, I'm able to remove, there's 2 that are close. I think it's these 2. I'm able to remove those 2, and maybe one other one I'd have to double check, but I believe I have a total of at least 3 leaders that I'm able to remove.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time following the drawing. Can we just talk about the pictures one more time? So the bullnose is where?
At the bottom,
At the bottom.
where
of
the
what?
brick changes colors.
At the very bottom of the
Very bottom.
Can
So
point-
when
can
you
put the
move from the
pointer-
lighter brick
can you
to
put
the
your point-
darker brick,
Can you put the pointer on the
Yep.
drawing?
right down here,
But only in the one section.
it will go across the whole length of the building.
Okay, so the top left picture, that's going to be along the entire bottom of the.
You are correct,
Okay.
yes.
And then the inlaid brick and the upper right-hand picture.
Yep.
Where is that on the?
That is at the top, at the roof. There are 2 inlay bricks or recessed bricks closer to the parapet up here.
And that runs the full length of the
That
building?
runs a full length too, yes.
Okay. And then the soldier bricks are where? They're on every single window?
They are on every single window and every single door, along with right below or at the top of the roof, you have a metal parapet, and right below that, you'll see a soldier course too. So if you go driving around town here, you'll see a similar detail of a soldier course at the top of the roof's edge on a lot of buildings around town. So just take a look when you're out walking around.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I think you said this already, but I just got a bit confused. So what's different, other than the color, about the brick detail on the darker portion?
There is nothing different other than the bullnose at the bottom. It just was lowered from where it was before.
Okay, but sorry, is the bullnose running the full length of the?
Yes.
So what's different about that darker section? It's lower on that section?
It's lower. It used to be, let me go back to the original.
It looked like the wall,
Yeah, it was about right here before.
Oh, so you're just saying what's different from before, not what's different from the rest of the facade?
right, no, this is,
Correct.
yeah, what different from before, right.
Okay, so.
Because Sally, in the rest of the building, you have that darker brick almost at ground level.
Yeah.
So in the first design, it came out looking like the cafeteria wall here. And that did not match the rest of the building. So we just lowered, so if you look at this wall, we lowered the blue down to, one block.
It helps to give it a little bit more of a vertical feel.
Sure.
It's on page 10, Sally. Go back to page 10, it's the original design versus the
Yeah,
modified.
right. I guess I'm just, yeah. I think, part of the issue with presentation last time is that we had a hard time visualizing some of the things, and now today we're talking about some potential changes because of that. So I just want to make sure that we really understand.
You
where we
understand
are
it. That's
today,
okay.
So we don't have to.
That's all right.
Revisit again.
Yep.
And with that.
And that's fine.
Right.
So, one of the other things that we did here, let me go forward to, oh, I skipped it, there we go. One of the other things we did here, if you look at the original picture here at the main entrance, those windows were a lot smaller. They too were 4 foot high. We increased the height of those. We also added a center medallion in here, which, will work with the district to determine, what is inside of that medallion. We also created another soldier course over this main entrance here and did the same detail at the parapet here as we did before. So the west elevation, not too much has changed along the west elevation. We did maintain our new height for the doors. So there's a transom window above the doors. The windows inside of the darker section here are also taller windows. The windows that were in the gymnasium were always at 6 foot, so we maintain that 6 foot height. At the windows too, at those gymnasium windows, we also have the sunshades. They were always part of the design. Go ahead.
They're only on that side of the building.
Only on the west elevation of the building. It is really it's a west-southwest elevation.
And those sunshades, they're fixed, right? They're not
They are fixed. They do
retractable.
not move.
And that picture has one panel looks like not glass and the other two glass. Is that what we're going for? Or because it looks like there's 3 panels of glass in the cutout.
In the image on the lower right,
Yep.
so the image on the lower right is not to show you what the glass is going to look like. It is just to show you what the sunshades are going to look like. Those will be 6 foot high windows. They will both be glass.
When we met with Building and Grounds, we talked about some of the stock photos that were in the last presentation that I think were kind of confusing for people. We took all of them out with the exception of this one and the ones with the recessed bricks and whatnot around the brick.
Right.
So that you'd have an idea of what they would look like. Because quite frankly, when we sat to talk about this a few months ago, talked about sunshades, I wasn't thinking, for my mind, a shade is something you put in the window, you pull down, right? So we thought that would at least show you what, if you didn't know what the sunshade was, what it would look like.
And
But the way
these-
the windows will look is what's in the drawing. And they'll be consistent with the windows on the other side,
Correct.
the north elevation.
Correct. And the sunshades do have a big impact on the light that is getting into those windows on that side. They are up high. They will create good light in there, and now it will be filtered light. We did a diagram, and if you guys wish, I can send it to you showing you the impact of the sunshades. Go ahead.
So those sunshades, are they metal bars or are they actually covered, like with some kind of translucent?
They are metal bars. Yep.
I think, just a point of format, especially since, it's not, I'm not sure what's happening with all these documents. If there's call-out pictures that are to show one element but not other elements, it might be helpful just to note that on, somewhere on the slide, that these are depicting the shade, not the panel in this example, or the brick, not the color in the other example. Might just be helpful in terms of understanding the deck.
Okay. Are you guys ready to move on, or do you have any other questions?
Good.
Okay.
Actually, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Is there a picture of the third side of the building?
We have not done any sort of presentation drawing of the other sides of the building, no. They would just be line construction documents that we have completed.
Are there windows on that side, or is it just all brick?
No, let me go back to the floor plan. So the windows, you'll see that this elevation, the west elevation, and the north elevation have windows. The reason that you don't have windows down here is because you have large mechanical units there. You do not want windows there.
Is there a loading dock there or anything like that?
Okay, so on the back side here, there is a loading area for any type of, there's stairs here so you can access the stage there. It's a double set of doors. On this side of the stage, we have a ramp, so you could access, if you need to bring anything up that's larger, you could ramp it in. But again, there are no windows on this side right here because it is a stage. You don't want windows inside of the stage. This area along this side, there are windows where we can provide them, such as the classrooms, any small group learning rooms, stuff like that. Any more?
And the facade for the new addition on that side, is it going to be consistent with the facade in terms of the brick, like the brick
Yes.
detail, the coloring? Like,
Yep.
Can you give us any information about what it'll look like?
On which side? The south?
The side that's not depicted, yeah.
This one?
No, well, that one's facing the school, right? That's what's
Yep, that
facing
one's
the public.
facing the school.
Yeah, the one that would be facing the public.
This one? You'll actually only see a very small little section of this elevation. The rest of it is connected to the building.
Yep, I'm talking about the white rectangle where you said the
Right over here?
Nope, the mechanical information at the,
The mechanical area.
Oh, right here, this
Yes.
side?
yes.
It will be similar. It is a brick parapet, and it will be designed the same as the other sides. But there are no windows on that side because of the mechanical equipment.
Okay, are there doors?
I don't believe there are doors either. Oh, hold on. No, there are no doors. I'd have to double check that, but I don't believe so. It's hard to see this drawing.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anybody else? I will start on Union. Before, as I've said before, this too is a three-phase project. Right now, what you're looking at is phase 2. It is a gymnasium addition, locker rooms, bathrooms, and connection corridor. Go ahead.
Do you have another site plan drawing like that other one for this?
I do.
Awesome.
It's a little different than the
That's
other
okay.
one, but it shows the location.
That's awesome. Great, thank you.
Oh, I'm trying to move. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So this elevation shows you a little bit of the material that we had selected with the district. And I know some of the concerns where it's a different color. This is just this is not presentation rendering, picture quality rendering. So it is close. What we have here is we took a picture of the brick that we're using. Next, so this board right here is the board or the brick that will be installed on this addition next to the brick that is on the building. They're identical. So these two bricks will match. It's just a non-photorealistic rendering.
What we did, in fact, we have that sample board here.
Yeah.
So Mr. Paterno, Mr. Schweitzer, and myself take 5 or 6 samples of bricks to the building, and the same people, substitute Ms. Carrion at Pierpont, did it, and we go and we hold them up, and we get the one that's closest. So it's like Rachel said, it's not an exact match, but you'd be hard pressed to tell that it's not when you're looking at it.
This one is as close as we will get. So even before we give it to Jack and everybody else to take a look at. We go through, a bunch of brick samples to come up with a collection, for them to review. So the brown here matches the trim that's already on the buildings. This is a white, which is similar to the columns. We've already matched those. This is just a subtler off color. We didn't want to compete with the entrance, so it's just a little bit off-white. And then this base actually matches the base that is used around here. So it's not going to have the same appearance or same texture. It's going to be a little different. It is going to be rough, but it will be blocks, not a retaining wall material. Yep.
I understand your point about it not being a picture-ready rendering, but back to Sally's point, if you're gonna present it, we're gonna see it, because we don't know, so let's make sure we understand what we're looking at, so that we understand it's not a picture quality, it's not ready, because when we see it, we make assumptions, like this is, and, so we're just, again, we just wanna know, what are we looking at, what are our expectations to what are we looking to see?
Okay.
So that's, I think, so with the details, that was my question, is with the brick, is that, I figured it was the existing and that, but, so, thank you for pointing that out.
And that's why I'm here, is to walk you guys through it, because otherwise there gets to be so many words on these presentations that nobody takes the time to read them. Does anybody else have any more questions on Union? Go ahead.
So this is, again, it's just one side of three. So what do we have in the back of the building? I don't think we've seen an image of that yet.
So we haven't developed a presentation drawing for those. It's something, we could do. It's just something that we haven't done yet as a presentation. We do have construction documents, but nothing for a presentation.
Can you explain it to us? Because I don't know what it looks like. Are there
Yeah.
windows? Are there doors? Is it more of the same
Yeah.
colors?
So on the other sides, we have windows up here and windows on this facade too. We have doors that go into the building here. They have covered canopies. And where the doors are, there are glass walls all the way vertically to the top of the structure. This side over here, there are no windows into the gymnasium. On top of this roof, we have mechanical equipment. We do have windows along this side into the locker rooms that are up high. The bathrooms do not have any windows in them. We do have windows along the corridor at each of the landings. We have egress doors here out from the main corridor. Go ahead.
Just to be sure, right, the top of that page there is, if you're looking down at the top, that'd be the next page looking in, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again, Greg?
Yeah, so the top of that page looking down is equivalent to the next page.
Right. This would be from where your elevation is taken of that facade.
There's a lot of room in there.
The one image that we've seen is the one on the top of this drawing.
Correct.
So, I know everything went out to bid. Are the drawings that went out for bid, are they up on the website?
That's a good question for Jack. Just so you know, we don't put full drawings up on websites either, but I don't know if they've put anything for the district to review.
What, for the bid?
No, the drawings.
I don't believe they're up, no.
'Cause
Joe?
hey, sorry, Jack.
Joe, are they up or? No.
As I say, listen, everybody, I think it'd be, especially for the board, if there's no objections, I think it wouldn't hurt for this group, to see the drawings, the construction drawings, look at them, and, just, because I think there's a lot of questions here that I think would be answered by that. Because I think once you pass this drawing, right, when you pass the architectural around and everybody looks at it, it's like, oh, there it is. I think it was kind of an eye-popping for everybody. Oh, okay, then we can relate to streets and, okay, there's a sidewalk around it, there's a planter,
I agree with you, James. I think that would be helpful, but I also think that not everybody can look at a construction drawing. Clearly, from my questions, I have a hard time and understand what it's going to look like. And, you know, we're representing the community here, and what the outside of the buildings looks like really matters. Obviously, what we want to focus on is the functionality of the buildings, but we also want to understand what they're going to look like built into the space of our town. So I would like to be able to understand, before we move forward with letting these contracts, what do the facades look like? I understand we won't know every single detail, but to not have seen any
And I
depiction
think
of that.
from just a general person, I mean, I can show this to members of my family and they're like, whatever, you know, they don't understand it either. That's where renderings come in, and it is much easier for any general person to understand a picture that is provided, not an elevation, not a plan, but a rendering.
Right, but even the drawing that we looked at from the other elevation, which I guess you would not consider that a rendering.
Right.
That would be a helpful amount of detail too.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a
also
step in the right
visible.
direction. At least gives some semblance of what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, can we? Do you
And
have that?
that's up to Jack and Joe, how much information and who the information is shared with. I know it is a safety, security concern too.
What are we talking
What
about?
the
Drawing?
exterior of the building looks
Right,
like?
the construction documents.
Well, the construction documents are different from the drawing. I think what Ms. LeBrera is saying is, and I agree with Sally, what you're saying. I mean, I've been looking at construction drawings for 3 years now, and I've gotten better at it, but that's like, you know,
Yeah.
I got better at throwing a fastball too, but I'm not pitching anymore. So I think the drawing, even one that's not a true rendering, like the one of the side of the gym, for the other sides of the gym, would at least give a visual. I think, you know, I'm looking at the drawing saying, well, the other side of the gym is going to look like, you know, the same brick, and it's going to match, and, you know, I see the drawings, the architectural drawings. I say, yeah, there's going to be windows. But if you haven't seen any of that,
Right.
hard to imagine it. So, you know, as opposed to a rendering, the other picture, if we could do that for the other side, just to
And I think-
put everybody's mind at ease, and
Yeah.
see, put everybody's mind at ease and see what it's going to look like.
And I think to echo Sally's point, we represent the community, and accordingly, we're going to be the ones answerable to the community when they have questions about this. And we've tried to be completely transparent in the project. Your point on security, incredibly well taken. We don't need to give up any of those sort of elements, but I think that this is a good compromise.
Well, and I think, I mean, I can talk with Jack and Joe to see which ones that we can get you guys, but I definitely have all the elevations, and we'll
Rachel,
just work.
just so we're all clear, so, you know, we can, if you go back to the picture of the
Yep.
gym, so we understand that the coloring isn't exact, that's why we show the coloring there. Everything isn't exact, but what you're saying is, Sally, the rest of you, a picture like that for the other side would at least give a concept of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think, you know, just this specific presentation has 3 different formats of elevations, as I understand them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's the Pierpont drawings are more detailed, and they are like line
Those are
drawings.
construction document
Right.
elevations, yes.
This one seems like a more simplistic, but yet somewhat easier to understand, I
Right.
think, visually, right?
Mhm.
And then the Mortimer piece seems like it's maybe somewhere in between. I don't want to speak for the other board members. I found the Mortimer drawing format to be pretty easy to understand. I know that building very well too. I live across the street from it, but I feel like I know it. From the photos, I can kind of get a better sense of what the detail is and what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
From this one, I can see what it's going to look like, and then from the Pierpont one with the discussion, I can understand the details. So
Yes.
it would be good to sort of land on a format and then maybe make that the consistent methodology that we're looking at here at this board. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's the design approval stage. I would leave that to, again, whatever that process is with buildings and grounds and the school administrators. But I think from the board's perspective, we should align on, you know, what do we consider a drawing that sort of gives us a good understanding of what the building's going to look like.
Correct. Okay.
I would also add that in addition to that, we need to see I think we should see a the drawing that you passed around, showing us what the new building looks like in relationship to all the streets around it, the surrounding houses and stuff. Because it's from some in here, it's really tough to see. Is it right on the street? Is there a setback, or how much of a setback is there? You know, and that's going to be important for a lot of people. So having that specific drawing as well, I think, would be very useful.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can you go through some of these rooms on page 15 and say what they are? Like, if you go back a slide to page 15, let's start with the top of the top of the gym. See the
You're
floor.
wondering what's in these rooms?
Yeah, I see a bunch of rooms, and I think I know what the locker rooms are, but the rest of them, I don't know what they are.
Okay, so I have to go from memory because we don't have that information on this document. I want to say that these two rooms over here are mechanical, electrical, utility rooms. This room right here is a storage room. This might also be a storage room too. I'd have to confirm that information. You also have coaches' rooms right here and down here.
Right. So if you look in any of our gyms, we have storage rooms for the physical education equipment, and you have coaches' offices or phys ed teacher offices, which is in lieu of their classroom where their desk is and phone and computer and the like. So that's what those rooms
I
are.
didn't know which was which, that's all. And in between the locker rooms, what's,
The locker rooms,
yeah, locker rooms have their frame.
these are the locker rooms right here and here.
And the area in the middle of them?
This area in the middle is a male toilet room and a female toilet room.
Are those bleachers permanent or are they retractable?
They are
Bleachers,
retractable.
retractable, just like at any other
Got
gym.
it.
And no stage in Union because they have the auditorium.
Yep.
Correct.
So therefore, you have bleachers on both sides.
I know in Union we're also working on the front of the building, and there's nothing in here on the front of the building. Are those columns the columns are being replaced, correct?
Right, that, we removed that. We did have that information in one of the
They're-
previous presentations.
Well, yeah, because they're the identical columns.
It's
They're
identical.
identical replacements, correct.
And right, we met with the West End Historical Society on that to make sure they were on board with it.
Good.
And, I mean, they're made out of vinyl, not wood, correct?
They're actually fiberglass.
Fiberglass, not
Yep.
wood, so they're not going to rot on us like the wood ones did.
Yep.
But the design is identical.
Very good.
And the columns on the gym edition that you saw may not match the
Correct.
design of those columns directly, but they're to give the same appearance of white columns by the
I
entrance.
understand. That makes sense. All right, thank you.
Why won't you make them white, though? You said that the ones on the addition for the gym are not going to be white?
No, the addition, they are white too. They do match. It's, the off-white is used on the brick sill and the head of the stone. So if you, this is the off-white color, it just blends in nicer and it doesn't stand out from the brick. It's, the color is so different up on this screen from, you know, the selections that we have. Even on the prints that you guys have, it is different than what we really have. What's that?
It's lavender on the front.
Yeah, it looks different on your prints too. Go ahead.
I don't have in here, but the current gym being turned to side glass, I believe there was like 2 and 1, is that?
Right, so we removed that slide too, but yes, there are two that are next to each other and then there's one that's horizontal.
Yeah. Are those walls permanent? Or can that be
Yes,
opened up to
those
a-
walls are permanent.
Okay.
We didn't, if you put in any moving partitions, you do have to increase the structure. Any more questions?
Just one.
Okay.
Sorry. When you did the addition in 2005, when it was open, the passage of the 2002 or 3 referendum, you kept the wooden doors, or you did something matching the wood, the last white door that's...
Sure. There's a pediment there that matches on top of the door.
You don't want to do that with the new one?
That is undercovered and it just, it wouldn't match. You can't get it underneath there because of the height. The doors themselves may match. I'd have to double check. Visually, I can't see what's there. Any more questions before I move on to the high school?
I just thought it was important to keep pictures of what it looks like, because some people see it, some people don't, I'm familiar with it. I know there was some discussion about, we're referring to the replacement as a window replacement because the windows make up a large amount of the facade, but obviously it's not all windows. Yes, the air conditioner is going out, so there'll be central air, so that's going to make it look better as well. But that's what it looks like right now. And the back, all of you are familiar with this because you come down the driveway for board meetings. And the 4 doors. So, and that's the locker rooms, that you see on the bottom left.
Right, at the bottom left-hand corner of the locker rooms.
But just to clarify, when you say the windows are being replaced, the mauve panels are part of
Everything's
the
being
windows,
replaced,
part
right.
of the window system.
But
Right.
we were using the name of, hopper windows versus casement windows,
Right.
where it wasn't just windows. I mean, if you think of, 2 brick pieces, and you're sliding something, in between it. So we're sliding it out, we're sliding the new thing in, right?
Okay. So one of the things we did was, you guys wanted to look at this with different color options. So we have a comparison here of the Mortimer wing elevation. This would be the design option 1, which would be the base bid, which is a casement option, casement window option. And we have shown it here with the 2 different variations in colors.
Can you
Or
explain-
2 variations, I mean, there's more.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are more, but this is,
considering, blue is our color, that's blue, I mean, it may not look blue, but again, it's blue.
Yeah, can you explain that whole casement window? Is it the section that's blue, is that part of the window, or is it a separate
no, the
panel?
section that's blue is either a metal panel or a spandrel glass, which means opaque. So you can't see the structure or the floor behind it. So below the window, you have a casement window. We have casement windows in each of these bays. There's one here, and then there's one here. So underneath that casement window, there is a metal panel. Underneath the glass is a spandrel glass, or an opaque piece of glass that you won't see through.
So how is that different from the panels that we have there now? Because isn't that the problem that we're having with the panels? Am I correct?
The problems that you're having right now are the glazing that you have in place is only a single pane piece of glazing. This is a tinted, insulated, it's a double thick piece of glazing. It's a much more superior system that you have right now than you have.
And what's behind that metal panel?
So what's behind that metal panel is the mechanical equipment. So you will see we have metal panels here. Or you have right here is your vent, which is for the mechanical system that is in place. Where we have the spandrel glass, we have pipes that are running behind it. Instead of putting that on the outside of the building, we put it on the inside, and we have a little wall there that hides everything. So you wouldn't be able to have glass there anyway.
The biggest part, well, I shouldn't say the biggest part, but a huge part of this job is the replacement of mechanical systems for the univents, for the HVAC, for the heating and cooling, water, bathrooms. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure that's going to get either replaced or retrofitted to the new system.
Correct.
So, and to the point of what's the difference? Well, we talked repeatedly during both referendum that single pane, life expectancy of about 50 years. They were 60-plus years old. We should have a greater life expectancy here, but, I mean, right now, that 58 building looked okay when it was first built, too. It's just outlived his life of 50, 60 years. So, I'd say tell me about it in 60 years, but I'm not going to have to worry about that. But, tell somebody, tell my heirs about it. But, I think the quality of the panel for heating and cooling and security and sound and everything else will be no comparison. And also the aesthetic quality of it.
One of the other things I wanted to say, so below the glazing, you had the mechanical equipment, but above the glazing, you have the ceiling structure, the lights, everything, so you don't want to see what's going on above it either. There was a question here?
No.
So the mechanical, the reason why it didn't look like the first renderings we saw, or?
I think maybe as I go through it, you'll see the second rendering.
Like year or two ago.
Oh, years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, right, so that rendering. So those renderings there were just a quick image that we had looked at to see what our possibilities were. And not that we could ever go out without surveying and do an investigation. So what we did is we went and investigated once the referendum passed. So we went and investigated the mechanical system and the structural system. And what we have in place here is you can see the existing structure with the vertical elements here, the lighter elements. This is the vertical structure, and then you have large slabs of roof and floors. And the system that you're referring to, or the image that you're looking at, has a much larger cost impact because we're covering so much more than we did in this image, because the metal panels cover that whole facade there. And not only just cover the facade, they cover up and go above the structure as it is right now.
I guess the bottom of my question is, people are going to ask me, I was sold that, I'm getting that, why? And the answer is price is, people seem to be, why wasn't that factored into the price originally? So I just need to answer people when they ask me, why am I not getting that?
Right, and so I know that was not the only image that was shown. There was other ones that were shown too, when the referendum went out.
Well, Greg, one answer could be, and it may not be totally inaccurate, the rendering you're referring to was for the first referendum, which was defeated.
No, this was for the second one.
No, we used the same picture, I think.
Same picture, yeah.
Right. So, but the point I'm making is, yeah, you have brick still in that picture, but other than that, I mean, and that does become a cost factor. We also, we also have to look more detailed. I mean, the engineers spent days and days and days going through every nook and cranny of the building to see what could work and what couldn't work.
Right. Like
So,
the question is, what came up to make something like this not feasible? It was the mechanical systems and.
So the mechanical systems and the structural systems. We didn't investigate the structure. We knew what the structure was before the referendum, but we didn't do a thorough investigation before the referendum. So once the referendum passed, we went out and looked at it. And the image that you're looking at shows the mechanical system on the outside of the building, which is not an optimal situation. You want to enclose it inside of the building. It'll preserve the life cycle, the lifespan of your system, rather than running it on the outside. So by doing what we did is investigating the structure of the mechanical system, we found ways that are going to benefit the district in the long run, and having the mechanical system run inside of the building. And that allows us to do different things with the facade instead of running them on the outside.
Thank you.
So I have two questions. The first is that when I look at the inset drawing there on the left, there's one part of the window detail is different. Is that because is that a window? Is that the only window that opens, or is it not?
You are correct.
Okay.
So in each bay, there are casement windows, but there is only one casement window in each bay. So right here along the structure is a casement window, and then along this structure is a casement window. So each bay, structural bay, contains an operable casement window.
Got it.
And it is a little bit different because there is a metal mullion there.
Got it. Okay. And with the metal paneling, is there going to be what's the lifespan of that? Is there, I'm sure there's a finite.
There's definitely a warranty on it, and there's a difference between warranty and lifespan. I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I can get it. And it is much better than it used to be. It is a laminated, insulated piece of metal, not just a piece of metal.
In terms of those bays of windows where only one opens, how many of those bays of windows are in a classroom?
I'm sorry, can you say that louder? I can't hear you.
How many of those bays, is it 4 windows and one of the 4 opens? How many of those are in a classroom?
So actually, a classroom typically consists of 2 of those bays, structural bays. So you would have 2 operable windows in each of those classrooms. And that's not in every case. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's 1.
And it looks like one of the panels is a darker color.
You are correct. So the darker panels are the metal panels, such as underneath the casement window there. These are lighter. They are the spandrel glazing. So they're opaque. You won't see through them. You can't see the structure, but it's going to give you a nice, smooth, clean look.
So it'll look different or not?
It'll look different than what's there.
Well, than what's there now?
Yes.
Right, no, but I'm asking about the color. So will it be that like every...
It will be very close to what is in the metal panel.
It can't be the same.
It'll be close as we can get it if that's what the district desires. Or it could be something completely different. We have a lot of choices.
Can you explain more about the whole screen?
So before I flip on my slide, I have one more question. Go ahead.
The darker rendition doesn't seem to have the little smaller windows. I guess it does, and you just can't see it.
It does, and you just can't see it up on the screen. Does everybody want me to flip? Okay. So this is the design option 2, which was actually going to be bid as an alternate with the screens. And you had a question about the screens?
Yeah, are they offset? Can you explain a little bit more
Yes.
about this?
So they are not attached directly to the building. They are offset to hide rain leaders, just different elements, and to give it more of a 3D appearance. So they are offset in a triangular formation, actually.
Okay.
Aside from the rain, you say leaders, aside from those, what are they hiding?
We have, there's multiple classrooms within the Mortimer wing that has fan coil units above the ceiling, which the unit ventilators require condensate drains, but the fan coil units require air intakes. And so those are additional louvers, and those louvers will typically be screened by those new screens.
So I guess this is probably maybe a question for Jack. So obviously this goes out to bid and we get a couple numbers back. Who, how, when, where do we decide which option that we're going to go with? What does that whole process entail? Is that the Buildings and Grounds Committee that handles that? I was just curious at where we end up as to which option.
Well, the first thing is we go out to bid and we list screens as an alternate, and we see, if the bids come in where we can't afford the ultimate, then the decision's just been made.
Yeah, well,
For us.
obviously, yeah. But in the event that,
Well, I think we have a discussion with Building and Grounds. We go from there.
okay,
We have a discussion with the building principal. We have a discussion with, the folks here, whoever we may include in that discussion.
Okay.
We may have a discussion with Director of Building and Grounds, because there's some cleaning that might have to take place of the screening, and maintenance may have to take place. We have those discussions before we make a final decision. Certainly, the Mortimer Avenue wing is something that we would probably go to the board and say, Building and Grounds have met, the high school administration's met. Kelly and I have met with the engineers and management team, and we're recommending that we go forward with this. And although it's not a board vote, certainly you'd want, if not unanimous, you'd like consensus that that's the way to go.
okay. When does this come up? When does this contract go out to bid?
Well, it goes out to bid in
December.
December with opening in January.
Right.
But, again, like I said in my comments about tonight's bid, you're awarding a contract to a company, and then you start really working on the details.
Yeah.
I understand the need for thorough and examination, due diligence, level of comfort, right? But you also have to understand that all these things are timed in a way so that the project gets done and we can keep our doors open for students. So we can't rush when we make a mistake, but if we go too slow, we lose a year. And so that's something we have to keep in mind too. We have to work through the reality of the bid award, the amount of money we have, the choices that we have based on that.
When would the color decision be made, Jack? Does that have to be made before it goes out to bid, or is that that's a later decision?
No. We're bidding on screens, whether they're going to be blue screens, green screens. That's something we decide. I mean, I don't know, Rachel, when in the process we decide that, but the first summer of work is the mechanical work, correct?
That is correct. So the first summer of work, you will not see anything going on at the outside to replace the window systems. That will happen the following summer.
We were able, and I use we very, very loosely because I had nothing to do with it, but the engineers and the architect team were able to figure out by doing the mechanical work up front and working a way to then connect the new facade to the mechanical and reconnecting everything. And you can see I'm talking like somebody who doesn't understand what he's talking about, but trying to sound good. We were able to do it where instead of doing it in sections over a summer of the facade panels, we'll do all the mechanical work, and then hopefully the plan will be to get all the facade panels done the following summer. So to
Correct.
answer your question, I don't know exactly when we'd be picking color, but it's certainly not happening real quickly.
No, it won't. It's nothing that is quick. It is something that does require a long lead time, though. So when the contractor submits his drawings for us to review, we will come to the district to request those final colors. But Jack is right, we do not bid. We're not bidding colors, we're bidding screens and panels and windows.
And again, we have no real idea of how these bids, play out. So they're in as an alternate because we don't want to have to reject the whole project because screens are going to put us over the top. So the first thing is to see even if they make the cut in terms of the budget. But the screens also provide you the ability through LED lighting and the like to come up with things like RHS or bulldogs or whatever you might want. On the locker room side where you see the screens covering those locker room windows, that's the gym. You could put bulldogs or a bulldog caricature or whatever you want. So they also add that aesthetic value to the gym, to the building.
Correct. So on the screen on the back side of the lockers, we can put an image of a bulldog, we can write Rutherford. There's a lot of different options that we do have, and Right now, they will be bid as screens. We do need to say, you know, how many images are on there and where they're going so they can come up with a price, so.
Are the screens gray here and the screens are here, just a different color?
Correct. So
Okay.
on this image on the top, you will see that the screens on the top are gray and this with the blue panels and blue spandrel glazing. And then on the bottom, the screens are blue when you have the gray background. Go ahead.
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing, so if we just look at these three projects, so Pierpont we know is going to be potentially a change order. Union is getting approved tonight in terms of a bid, and then Mortimer Wing is January. I think the question that I'm hearing and the question that I would have as well is what is the timeline between the time in which each of those bids is accepted, like where we are right now, and the timeline for having to complete, like what the design will look like? Is that 1 month, 2 months? Because that then dictates the way in which, whether it's the Building and Grounds Committee can sort of see what happens between the now and then. So just as an example, to the point of Mortimer, that goes out to bid in January. It either has the screens or it doesn't have the screens. And whatever that outcome is, at that point, that timeline between when that bid is approved and when things really start with construction, so when is the last point in which design can be reviewed, I think that time frame is something that would be helpful for
So
the board to understand.
I think one of the important things is to understand is you want to have the design approved before you go out to bid. And then that way you can avoid change orders. So I'll use Pierpont as an example. That one was, you know, we did review it. We had some extra comments. There will be a change order because it wasn't the way it was bid. With Mortimer Wing,
No, I think Sergio's talking more about
colors,
colors.
Okay.
And, right? I mean, you're talking more, you're not talking
Well-
about saying a totally different design.
Well, I think that, I don't think that that's what we're talking about for Union in terms of a totally different design. I think with Pierpont, we know that that's already going to be a change order. I think with Mortimer, we want to make sure that we've got the right things that are, you know, put on the ballot to get bid out. So that is one part of it, but then the other part is, I think what Jack is saying, which is, once that gets bid on, the actual design element and some of those nuances, like what that timeline also looks like as well.
So for color selection, you have time after the bid. That's primarily the only thing that we can change. We can always remove the screens if we bid them as an alternate. Once they submit their documents, we can say, we're not doing the screens, please provide us with a credit.
So I think what Sergio, if I can wrap it up for you, is I don't think there's any other structural change. I think Pierpont had the most changes structurally out of anything. So Union, I don't think there was anything majorly structural there. In the high school, you know, I think it's just, you know, aesthetics, you know. So I think Pierpont was the one that really had the, you know, the major changes to the windows, the facades, those things. So from sitting in the Building and Ground Committee and sitting here tonight, I just think that the rest of this, like for Union in the high school, is just the aesthetics. I don't think it's design oriented.
So I just want to clarify that so that that's something that the board walks away understanding and that we all have that, you know, shared understanding is what does the Building and Grounds Committee involvement look like, which has been a question that's come up, and what is it exactly we're thinking about. So the Mortimer has not gone out to bid, so there are like the structural pieces that we're talking about. Pierpont we know is going to be a change order. So for Pierpont and Union, it is the aesthetic piece. You're basically talking about colors and minor things. Correct?
Well, I think that's for Union and the high school, you're just talking aesthetics wise, and more so with Pierpont was the structural changes.
Right.
You know, you increase window sizes, you increase, you increase the vents and stuff like that. You added stuff to it, to the scope after the fact. So I think Union, you know, I didn't hear anything tonight that said Union was structurally changing and or the high school.
I think Union, we were looking for, if I could speak for the board, I think, you know, just a better picture of, maybe not even a better picture, the same picture of the other two sides.
Right.
right?
Well, I mean, like, I looked at the drawing for Union, which helped me a lot.
Right, well, I mean, we can get you some drawings, but I'm talking just in terms of, but to Sally's point, and I think I agree with that point, I didn't want to say it, but for a lot of people, and I put myself in that boat, I've gotten better, like I said, the drawings sometimes confuse me. I agree with Chris, I sometimes have to see, well, what street is there? You know, because I'm looking at a drawing without the street. So, you know, but regardless of how we do it for Union, just a better, for the level of understanding and comfort, and to see that what you see on the one side of the building is going to be, to whatever extent possible, replicated on the others. In some cases, there won't be a window because there's a stage or a mechanical room. Like. I think with the high school, I mean, having spent so much, you know, time on this, you know, I think these structures are kind of the concept, the conceptual. That's what I meant by the conceptual design, I think is what we have, right? And then, okay, so do we get the screens in the bid or do we not? If we get the screens, okay, now we got them. To Rachel's point, well, we got them. Do we really want them? Then if we want them, do we want, you know, what color do we want for them? What color do we want on these panels? You know, I mean, again, I think, you know, we're blue and we should reflect blue. I don't think we should have a red building and people think they're in, you know, Ridgefield Park or something like that. But, you know, that's again a debatable point. But that's, now, again, from Sergio's point of question, which I don't think still has been answered completely, if the board awards a bid in January on Mortimer, and, you know, the first thing is going to be getting people, and I want you to understand that January allows us to get people in here in April, maybe even late March, working a 3 to 11 or a 4 to 11 shift to start doing the mechanical work to get ready for the summer. Otherwise, we're not going to be ready in the summer. Okay? So, but when we have to finally say, okay, you know, is it blue because we're blue, and is it going to be, does that happen in 2 months, 1 month, 3 months after January?
So to answer the question about the colors, you probably have a range from, you know, 2 to 4 months after it's been awarded. And I want to say too that these colors are in phase 2. We can't control really when the contractor is going to start those submittals for phase 2. He could start them early. He could wait, you know, a whole year to submit them. So I don't want him to, but...
but we're thinking at least 2 to 4 months, right?
Yes.
And maybe longer if the contract is going to start the submittals a little later.
But if you're that start and second phase isn't until 2022.
Right.
So, I mean, you realistically don't have to order, you know, late 2021 is when you truly submit, you know, your orders in, or early.
Maybe. I don't have control of that.
And we do have time, though, for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of time in there to, you know, for the colors. I mean, if you're saying 2 to 4 month lead time, you're not going until summer 2022.
Correct.
And I know, I mean, as a contractor, I know I'm not ordering anything until I have to.
Right.
You know?
I'm just curious, percentage-wise, how much do the screens increase the cost?
Percentage-wise, I do not have that number. I do not have that number, and I don't believe we'll actually see that real number until we have the bids.
The estimate, and I didn't bring that with me, the estimate that we met on about a month or 2 ago.
Right, from
Where
Epic,
we
yep.
take the estimate, I think I explained this the other night at Building and Grounds, there's an estimate done when we go out to submit the project to the state for approval, and then to the voter for approval. But then we take a look at the project a year later, 2 years later now when it's coming to bid. And Epic does what they did for us 2 years ago. They look at the project now and say, okay, let's look at prevailing costs, things that are happening now, and let's do another estimate. In almost every case, the estimate on every other project has been pretty close to the original estimate that we went out with, and when we came in, for most of the bids, as you know, they've either been at or slightly under. So the estimate 2 years ago, the estimate a few months ago, and the reality were consistent. When we did this walkthrough bid with Pierpont, we came in, or Bill came in very high, $4 or $5 million over. And we had met as a group to say, well, what can we eliminate? And the reality was we did eliminate a few things that were really not super essential. But then the conversation went to, well, we're not going to eliminate $5 million. If we do that, we're really throwing away the whole project. So we threw caution to the wind. We went out to bid, and the results were favorable. I mean, the estimator in this case, they were right 8 times. They were wrong this 1 time, and that was good. So we did the same thing with Mortimer. We came in with a favorable bid estimation, which, according to what the experts think, adding the screens and the like would keep us still at or under the budget. But until we actually go out, you don't know, which is why you want to put, you'll see we had 8 or 9 alternates on the union bid. One of the alternates we're going to ask, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been wrong a lot more lately than I've been right, but we didn't accept, because one was a deduction.
Correct.
Taking something out that we wanted in case we really had a bad experience and we had to cut something, right? So the alternates are strategically placed for things that you need but are not essential, or things that you could eliminate if you have to get under bid. So to answer your question, whoever asked the question, we are going to, we don't know, Dennis' question, we don't know exactly. We have an estimate. We think we're good with it, but that's the whole process of putting it as an alternate. If you're not good with it, it's not going to hurt you. And again, depending on where we land with Pierpont, with Mortimer, we might even put something in as a deduct, if we need that as an escape clause. We haven't gotten there yet. That's coming.
Go ahead.
Rich, I got a question. I know we've been talking about windows, but on the Mortimer side, the doorways, are the overhangs included in the bid to be renovated, or?
So on the Mortimer side, the overhangs are in the base bid to be to go with the new facade. The only one that is not in the base bid is this canopy here, because it is a whole roof system. It's a lower section. It comes out. Let me see if I can go back to the pictures. You see this picture here on the lower right? It's a large section.
That's part of a roof. That's that's my old office, the old English office. It's still the English office. I'm the old guy that used to be in it. And that's a roof.
Yes,
So
it's a
that
roof.
was not in the bid because you'd have to replace that whole structure in the roof.
Could there be
But it'll
some
get
lighting?
refurbished. It'll get, cleaned up a bit.
Mr. Hurley, could there be some lighting or something?
So there are existing lights along Mortimer facade, but all the lights that are on the building, attached to the building, are going to be removed, and then we're going to put in new lights. Go ahead.
Those doors and that facade on that, is that gonna match is that?
Correct, they will, yes.
You're saying aluminum, like, oh, we're gonna have brown and blue?
No.
I'm out.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have things I'd like to comment on. Living so close to the high school as our other board members, the windows were always like different colors because they would say in the old, gray to me, with the vents reminds me of like the old kind of look where it's like different colors. And also the gym, over the gym, if they could make it a little more, that's a sports entrance or a gym.
Okay, so we don't have an elevation of that is colored.
Okay, because that's like, a big thing, all the parents, that's when they go into the gym. they see
Yes,
that,
so those also have overhangs, and those were never part of the original design. They're not windows, but we're going to include them as an alternate. So if we can, we will do those overhangs.
We're talking about the front,
The 4 doors.
Mortimer.
Yeah, the 4 doors. The one with the roof.
Oh, okay.
She's talking about the 4-door entrance. We call
Oh,
it the
okay,
4
this one,
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
yes.
And that's,
Tho-
That's where our town goes in also.
right.
Yeah, and so those are new doors there, new panels. The roof there is not being replaced, and neither is the trim, though. But it is If I can go back to the picture.
Overhang or something, bulldogs, something like that. to make
Well,
it
again,
stand out.
if you go back to the screens,
Yeah.
if the screens get passed and we'll have screens, we could put screens, go to the screen picture.
Yep.
Those screens that say RHS, I mean, there's going to be screens, all those dark colors are screens, right? So
Correct.
we could put right by those doors, Bulldogs, Rutherford, welcome, anything we want.
It looks just plain over there, like a delivery door or something.
I'll work on that.
All right, thank you.
I have a question about the rear side. I don't
Okay.
know if you already went
Do you
through
want me
that.
to look at the pictures or the drawing?
The pic, the drawing.
Okay, I have the one up without the screens.
Yeah. So just a question. So in the front of the building, the pictures for the front of the building, the vertical separators.
Yes, they were lighter.
They're white, yeah.
Yeah,
And here they're blue and
right.
gray.
It is something that should be corrected. They should be light. They should match the ones on the front.
Right.
So the scheme for the front is
Yes,
the one you're.
correct.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The screens, like, how big are we talking? Big holes, little holes? When you say screens, what are we talking?
Right now, that is undefined.
Okay.
And I think if we want to put, let's say we want to put a bulldog in it, they're going to manipulate those holes so it appears as a bulldog or it appears as RHS, and we can, work with the holes in the screen to make those images come through.
Is there any concern at all that someone could climb it?
Someone what?
You can't put your foot in there
All right.
unless you are really strong in your fingers.
Just ask.
Yeah.
Well, now there is.
Thanks for
No,
putting that there, Chris.
I have looked at them, and right now, the screens that we have samples of are very small.
Okay.
So there's no way a foot can get in there or anything to climb them. But it is an interesting concern that I have not heard.
I just think back to when the New York Times did their building, they did bars, and some young idiot ended up climbing all the way to the top of the building because of it. Just putting it out there.
Nope.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's last. One other thing that came up at the last meeting, though, if you go to the front, and Diane, you'll see there's, hard to see them. It's probably easier if you look at the printed one, the different fencing,
I think you're talking about the railings?
really.
Okay. At the bottom of the image down here, you can see the railings
So-
on each of
yeah,
those.
So it's going to be higher, and again, how many posts we put in, we could determine
So
that.
they have to be to code. The railing has to be 42 inches high to code. Right now, we have them displayed as vertical railings. They can't be spaced more than 4 inches apart. It's just a code issue, and we are following it.
Will be aluminum?
It is undefined right now. They could be painted steel, aluminum. It's just something we're developing.
So this is the last slide of this one?
The Mortimer wing is the last
Okay.
set of images. Yes.
So I just want to ask a question actually to the board first, and then based on your answer, I'll ask Rachel the question, but she's going to know the question when I ask you the question first.
It's like a
So-
game show, we have to get one of those secret
It-
silent booths.
So it seems to me that obviously there's been a lot of work put in to revise this for this evening, and we do appreciate that. And clearly there are questions that members of the board still have trying to understand. Everyone's got purity of motive of wanting to make sure this is exactly what we understand it to be as representatives of the community. So I want to ask the board, as a next step, it would seem to me that some things that would be helpful to get everyone comfortable is if we were to say, if this PowerPoint, kept in its format, had some enhancements to it to get everyone comfortable. Things I've heard are all sides of the buildings being shown, the streets around it generally being shown. The Mortimer wing is sort of that middle ground, easiest to understand concept in terms of that kind of an aesthetic. things labeled in ways that will make it a little bit easier to read. If that were something that were a next iteration of this PowerPoint, I haven't asked Rachel if that's feasible, but would that be helpful as a next step? And so I'm asking the board first if
Yes,
that is.
Yeah, I think it's imperative.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and I think, I just want to make sure, because I think you were building off of a comment I made about the Mortimer drawings being the format that I think is most clear.
Right.
Not necessarily the scheme or the aesthetic of what it looks like, but just that level of drawing, to me, I can understand what the building's going to look like more so than the Pierpont drawing or the Union drawing.
Right.
And I think that echoes Noah's point, we're consistent throughout the three buildings. It would be really helpful, and I think, for me anyway, would resolve the necessity for a formal rendering.
Yeah, I would say it may make sense, although it doesn't necessarily need to happen next, but I think it probably will make sense to do a rendering, I would think, for Mortimer, given the sensitivity of the public's perception of the current facade and the sort of clarity. I would think of any of the buildings, that one might make the most sense, but I do think the next step would be to try and put things into a format like this, and then we can talk about whether or not the renderings are worth the additional expense.
So, and I'm asking the question because I think the questions that are coming up and people's ethic of care and concern is probably not going to go away without seeing sort of having a little bit of a better understanding of that aspect. So I guess the question is what I just said feasible within this PowerPoint?
It is something that we can produce, and I can work with Jack and Joe as to, when it gets done by, what you guys are exactly looking for. So it's definitely something we can do.
So
Dr.
again, to be
Lottie?
clear, Sergio, Dr. Lottie, Mortimer right now, we don't have to touch that one, right? That one, it's getting Union, the two sides of Union, and something for Pierpont, other than the architectural drawing. Is that correct?
So basically what people are saying is they're pretty clear about the Mortimer wing from these drawings, and Union and Pierpont, if they are sort of brought up to the level of understanding as Mortimer, that would be the next step. So focusing on those two. That's what people are
Dr. Lottie,
asking
is
for.
there an expectation that we're going to get new renditions before we vote for the Mortimer wing? That's, the timing. That's what you were trying to, I think, get to before.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is there a step in between that, which is basically aligning the presentation so that Pierpont and Union have a similar aesthetic presentation to the Mortimer wing, and then we see all of that. There is a question, I think, that I don't think we can determine tonight about whether or not we want to formalize a rendering for the Mortimer wing, given its complexity. I think that's something that we have to just think about, but I don't think it's a decision we're ready to make tonight, but I don't think it's off the table.
I agree, and I think that the priority should be Union and Pierpont, since the schedule's more advanced, right? And so I know we're going to review the Union bids tonight, and I know that we don't want to hold up the construction, but I do think as soon as possible, we want to make sure that we understand and are comfortable with what the other elevations look like. And that's why I think those two projects, or getting those pictures for the, or elevations for Union are probably most pressing, and then Pierpont as well.
I do have one question for you guys. So it's interesting, Mortimer does not have a floor plan that shows you any references. But do you want a floor plan to be incorporated into the Mortimer presentation?
Is it changing?
It's not changing, but in order to see the design or the elevations, would that help?
You mean the internal buildings?
I don't even need to show the internal, it could just be
Site plan.
Oh, you mean
A site plan showing
Yeah,
it.
okay, site plan, okay.
Yeah, I think the real, speaking for myself, I think the real issue with the site plan is with the new buildings, just because they're going to be replacing open space.
Sure.
And just understanding what that's going to mean for the people who live and are just around that space. So I think for Union and Pierpont, it's a bigger issue than for Mortimer, which is already built out. But I don't know if
Okay.
others.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I like the site plans. That's what I like to look at.
So is everyone comfortable with that as a next immediate step?
Yes.
Does everyone feel clear with, everyone's good?
And then next time we'll decide like the color that everyone
No.
prefers on the high school because, I think that's important.
So I think the way it landed is that after the high school bid goes out in January and it comes back, there's a few-month window where that could be chosen. And, I mean, philosophically, it's been my belief that the work gets done in the committees, and then things can be presented to the board, and you could ask questions. But really, if there's feedback, I think it would be good to make sure the Buildings and Grounds Committee has that and can represent the board in the committee meeting to sort of get to that point, if that makes sense.
Okay, so Rachel will email you,
Okay.
Joe will email you, I guess, in the morning to just confirm what we're talking about, and then you can
That's
give us
fine.
an idea of when you get it done by, or we'll tell you when we'd like it done by, and we'll work it out.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
very much.
Okay, so I was going to just, because that's still my report. Yeah. I just want to mention one more thing. I included in the packet, and I sent out today. If you're a parent, you got it. If you're a parent of a student in grade 4 to 12, a look ahead to what we'd like to do with students in January in terms of increasing instructional time. So if we, our K to 3 students, our pre-K to 3 students, and our 18 to 21 students have been in school for a full day. Well, the kindergarten kids are in half a day, but the teachers are teaching a full day. And, we would love to get to that point with the high school, middle school, and Pierpont kids. The real rub there is the lunch, as we talked about, not being able to utilize classrooms, not having the aides to keep them in classrooms to eat, not wanting to have an open lunch, necessarily. So lunch is the drawback. So to maximize time, the idea of a split session with 3 hours in the morning approximately, and then another 2.5 or so in the afternoon, close to 3, with students coming in every day, either an AM or PM session, and then logging in the afternoon. So they're getting a full schedule every day. They're getting full class periods every day. Keep in mind, okay, that since March 13th, students have gotten a half a day of instruction in grades 4 to 12, and instead of a 58-minute block in grades 7 to 12, or a 42-minute block or more in grades 4 to 6, they've been getting less than that. So not only are they losing time in terms of hours in the day, they're losing instructional times in terms of period. So this split session idea in a 10-day cycle, currently our students who are coming in, the hybrids kids, get 20 hours a week, 20 hours in 10 days, not a week. 20 hours of in-person instruction, 20 hours of remote instruction. because they're in 5 days, they're home 5 days, approximately 4 hours. The students who are fully remote, they're getting 40 hours, they're getting 4 hours a day for the 10 days remotely. The split session would allow for 30 hours in 10 days of in-person, 30 hours of remote. And for the kids who are fully remote, 60 hours. So you go from 40 hours of instruction to 60 hours, which is significant. So I think it's a step in the right direction. It doesn't change any of the class sizes we're dealing with or the hall sizes we're dealing with. It just gets the kids in the building every day and gets them logging in the afternoon to classes, okay? And it can run a full schedule. So I think it's a step forward. If we keep going through the year, we got to take as many steps forward as we can, safely, securely, to give the students more opportunity to learn. I'll be very transparent, very honest. I've tried to be. We have had students going to school half days since March 16th. We got to get closer to a full day. And the way to do it at the high school, middle school, and Pierpont is through this split. Now, if things get positive, we get through the winter and things are looking good, maybe we get to the point where we could bring everybody in for a full day. That would be great. But if we don't, we're providing a full day of education finally come January. And the reason why we waited till January, as opposed to waiting for the start of what we're calling phase 3 in the end of November, well, number one, December is a short month. You get the week off for the holidays. December is often a fractured month. We also wanted to give parents notification from today to January 4th that maybe childcare is changing, maybe work schedules have to be adjusted. We had to let teachers know, who some of our teachers get accommodations to, because they have childcare issues. So it gave people time, it gave the teachers and the supervisors time to think about how, if any way, lessons have to be restructured and replanned. It also gave us a little time to, say, okay, we could tweak it a little bit here, or we could tweak it a little bit there. Starting January 4th takes us up to the beginning of what's going to be phase 4, January 25th, or whatever it's going to be, the end of the semester. So if we give it a 3-week, trial run, and we say, oh, we can make the periods a little bit longer, we can make them a little shorter, we can do this, we can do that. We have real data, not just thought process, right? So that's why we did it. So I think it's going to be a step in the right direction to get our students back. You could just get a sense of the need that students have for more education, more structure. And what our student rep said, he said there's some benefits, for the fully remote as well. Well, the fully remote students, are going to get more instruction too, okay? And so it's a win-win for everybody. So that's the end of my report. Do you have any questions, Diane? Ms. Jones?
We'll start with Ms. Jones, then Mr. Sprayberry.
There's no switching off from the blue and the Bulldogs. The Blues are going in the morning in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade for the whole time?
The administrators there felt, and the parents in the room who had the conversation felt with the younger kids, it would be better to know this is what I have to do for childcare for a long period of time, as opposed to changing every week or changing every month.
Well, all right, I'm reading that. There's a 15-minute period in the lunch split from 11:10 to 12 o'clock. And in that period, the rooms are going to be cleaned?
Yeah.
Because you have the other one? All right. What if the child lives, let's say, on the other side of Orient Way? And this is one that has to go back so it can get home in time to be on for the remote in the afternoon.
Right. Okay, so we were talking 50 minutes, but I think it's an hour and 5 minutes of class. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I think it's about an hour and 5 minutes. In reality, it's more than 50 minutes before the class starts. So what I said was, our goal here is to maximize instruction, right? Not downtime. And 3 weeks in, if we continually have problems we could always look to make an adjustment, but we want to see if we're going to have problems.
And then we're also concerned with about fourth graders, if the parent is not home, getting himself to the afternoon session on their own.
Well, again, we have parents who every day, 3 days a week, have to deal with kids who are home the entire day. This is not, if you're looking for an ideal situation, wait until the vaccine comes and we're back to normal. There is no ideal. So parents have a responsibility. We're giving them 2 months to figure it out. I understand it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard on our teachers. It's going to be hard on everybody. It's hard on me. Okay? But we have a responsibility to educate students.
And just one more question. There was no concern about bringing full days. In other words, if you're a blue, you go on Monday all day?
We can't serve lunch. I said that. We can't. The younger kids can sit in their classroom with a lunch aid. We barely have enough lunch aids to cover those buildings. We would need 28 lunch aids at Pierpont. We would need probably 20 at Union. We'd probably need 30 at the high school, and we'd have to tell high school seniors, you're sitting in your class eating lunch. It won't work. We would love to have kids in for the full day, 5 days a week. We'd love to have them in every other day. But lunch is the drawback. Lunch is the drawback. In this cafeteria that holds 250 kids, we can socially distance 37.
But you have to do that whole cleaning anyway, right? Because you have the kids, the new
You
group
can't-
coming in the afternoon.
We're going to clean in the afternoon, but I'm not talking about cleaning. I'm talking about providing supervision for lunch. We would need to hire about 55 lunch aides. And we would have to tell young adults, you're sitting at your desk in your classroom eating out of a brown bag with a lunch aide watching you. It's not going to function. The younger kids, the reason why we did it with the younger kids, we did it for the very reason that we could provide lunch there and give them a full day of instruction. Okay? So that's our responsibility, to give as much instruction as we can. And I'll tell you, if we could do lunch, we'd have the place open for kids every day, but we can't provide that in what the county is telling us is a safe environment. Okay? Now keep in mind, they're saying 6 feet apart is a safe environment. However, if someone is positive, 6 feet apart doesn't matter anymore. You still have to be quarantined. So, there's a lot of doublespeak going on, okay? But that's why we're doing it.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So, I have a comment and then I do have a question. So my comment would be that I think there are a lot of different models for how schools can be configured. I don't think there is an exactly right model. I do think a philosophy and a vision that makes sense and is coherent is important. And I am hearing that piece, which is the philosophy is to try to increase instructional time safely. I also appreciate that, I do think the flexibility factor in saying, like, we're going to evaluate this over a, 3-week period and see, can we do more? Do we have to keep it the same? I think these are important elements. And I just want to recognize that because being in the field, there's so many different models, and I could sit in a room and have 50% of the people have, 10 different ideas about this. I just want to share that to say that these are all really complicated decisions in terms of all of these aspects, and so it's important to understand what's driving this, what's the philosophy behind it. So I do think that's an important thing to understand. If people are asking in the community, the philosophy is we're trying to safely increase instructional time in a way that makes sense. And what does that look like? I do want to just go back to the health and safety aspect and the cleaning piece, and just to clarify that aspect, because it is an hour, and I know that part of the philosophy was we have a lot of time to clean, and so just the question of a lot of kids leaving and then an hour later everyone coming back, is that...
We met with our building and grounds director, and the principals met with their custodians. We are going to be keeping right now we are on a very different custodial shift. We have the custodians who normally work at night come in 10, some of them come in at 10 o'clock, some come in a little later. everybody's done by 8 because we want to have a full complement while the students are in school. When we do this, we will move one custodian to the traditional night shift because we are also going to be increasing activities in the school. NJSIA is going forward with winter sports, at least as of now they are. Recreation, as you know, the governor gave the green light 2 weeks ago to allow youth sports indoor to take place, wrestling, things like that, which I thought was very interesting that he made that decision, but he made it. So recreation, who is not using our gyms, we told them that we would revisit it on November 30th. In terms of now, you know, they could be in here now, according to what the governor's saying, but we're going to wait November 30th to make a decision. So we'll have one custodian. So we'll have, and depending on the building, anywhere from 5 or 6, 7, some buildings, 3 or 4, because the night crew will be in there. They will do all the high-touch areas very thoroughly. They will go in and wipe down desks. We'll continue to have the kids in the upper grades also wipe their desks like they've been doing. And in every building, the 3 buildings that we're talking about, they were confident that in that hour and 5 minutes, it's going to be able to get done.
Okay. Okay.
And they'll use the guns, the spray on the
Yep.
high-touch areas, and in the classrooms they'll wipe.
The Ghostbuster gun, that's what I like to call
Yep.
it. Mr. Sprayberry.
So I say this as a parent and, but I also ask as a board member, you fully believe that the morning session's coming out and we're going to be able to thoroughly clean that Union Middle School between those kids in 54 minutes. So, I mean, and as a kid that's gonna be in the afternoon session, I have concerns of that early, because again, if that early session, Brave gets a positive test, then, I have concerns with it. And do we fully believe that we have the staff to clean that building prior to those students being in there? And, with everything from what the CDC is saying as far as it living in the air, are we given enough time in between those students, to safely come into that building?
Well, the answer that I've gotten is yes, we have enough time to clean. As far as the air, I think there's a lot of different ideas about the air. The air might last beyond an hour. The air might last to the next day, depends on what you read from the CDC when you read it. The answer is yes. We feel we can get it cleaned. I mean, we talk to the people who have to do it, and they feel they can. As far as there being a positive test in the morning, what happens in the afternoon? Well, it's only the students who would be exposed to that positive test. So the afternoon, as long as the room is clean, would not be impacted. There are many, well, again, I don't want to use an adjective when I'm not sure. There are several schools that have been doing a split session since September in Bergen County. A lot of the elementaries, because the elementaries who didn't have space to get the kids in wanted students in every day, and they've been doing splits since September. There are many that are moving towards that in this next phase. Again, these discussions don't just happen unilaterally. I'm part of the committee that establishes scheduling for the county. Includes 25 districts, and we met twice in the last couple of weeks talking about what we have done, what's worked successfully, what hasn't worked, what our plans are going forward. And so, yeah, I think it would work. Now, can I guarantee it's going to work? No. But do I think it's going to work? Do people tell me it's going to work? Yes. We have not had any, I said this on the video I recorded with the mayor and the director of Board of Health. We have not had any cases that have been attributed to anything in the schools. I don't want to jinx myself, right? Grades K to 3, where the concerns where kids are in the building all day, we have not had any cases involving a staff member or a student in those buildings every day. 2 cases we had were somebody coming in from the outside. So, I don't know. The big concern, we sat here in August, was, the kids eating lunch in the classroom, and knock on wood. Okay? Are they going to keep it clean? Well, knock on wood. It's worked. So I don't know. But again, to go back to what Dr. Alati said, we're either going to give our students a year and a half of 3.5 hours a day of instruction, or we got to take a step forward.
Thank you.
Ms. LeBear?
I know this is a really complicated answer, and I'm not looking for the complicated answer, just at a high level, just trying to conceptually understand, at least at the younger grades, for the split day, the kids that are in school in the morning and then go home in the afternoon, is it that the kids in the afternoon are going to do the same thing that the kids in the morning did?
No,
Or is it that
no.
they're just going to listen
So,
in on the
no. You're
different
going to
parts of the day?
have Pierpont School, you said the younger kids.
Yeah.
So they took their schedule into a 9-period day. Okay? So in the morning, the 6th grade are going to go in periods 1, 2, 3, 4. So whatever that might be, English, math, science,
Right.
okay?
So the blue cohort, let's say, right?
Right.
Right.
They're in their person, right? The afternoon is going to be periods 6, 7, 8, 9. Might be sciences, different subjects. So the kids are in person for that. The morning group is zooming in to that,
To the same.
okay? What they're going to switch, the high school is switching, I think, every 2 days or every other day. With the younger kids, they're going to stay they're going to switch the schedule, not the kids, every week.
Uh-huh.
So for 1 week, you'll have 5 days of English in person in the morning. The afternoon group will have 5 days of English zooming in.
Got
The
it.
next week, they flip the schedule,
Yep.
so English is in the afternoon,
Right.
okay? So it's going to work out where you'll get equal in person, equal zooming in, but it's a full day.
Right. Okay. So the teacher's going to run through a full
Teacher's
full
teaching
segment.
a regular day like he would, or she would, if all the kids were in front of her. Because
Understood.
there'll be kids in front of her for 9 periods, there'll just be different kids in the afternoon and in the morning,
Okay. Got it.
okay?
Other-
And unless there are other questions, that's my 2-hour-long report.
Okay. Excellent.
And-
Any other
That's why
comments
Sally
from
said
Mr.
there's a
Early?
high answer level answer to that.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Hurley before we move on to the report of the president? All right, excellent. So I have just 2 points. First is congratulations to all of the Scholastic Award winners. This was the evening that we would have recognized them, so just a moment of praise and congratulations for all of them. And second point is I wanted to talk briefly about the board self-evaluation. So every year around this time, we have engaged in a board self-evaluation through NJSBA. They have an actual tool that we have used to evaluate how we function. There are different categories, and there's mostly checkoffs of how we rate ourselves within those categories. And then there's a narrative section toward the end. So the question is, do we want to use that tool this year? How do we want to handle board self-evaluation? Full disclosure, we're a little bit behind in terms of where we would be with board self-evaluation right now. In speaking with Mr. Mazzone, Vice President and Strategic Planning Chair, one of the things that was brought up at the last board meeting was the idea of getting feedback about what this board feels they need to work on to continue to grow. And so, recommendation, I think doing a self-evaluation as a board is an important thing, but I also think it should be meaningful and it should be something that we're going to get something out of. So my suggestion for board comment is that we don't use the board self-evaluation from NJSBA to the letter of the law per se, but we use that as a model and have the Strategic Planning Committee devise a survey that will be basically the framework of that board self-evaluation, but it will also have some additional questions that we've been talking about putting together to really understand what would the board like to work on, what would they like to see in terms of their own growth and development. So it would incorporate a lot of what's in the board self-evaluation, My concern with the board self-evaluation, because I did review it, is when you look at all these different categories and you try to say, what am I going to do with the results? Really, the salient pieces that come from it are the narrative pieces that you provide. The narratives give like the rich part. Everything else is just, I think we're doing very well, pretty well, and it doesn't give you as much information. And I think the goal is to get as much info as possible. So that is the recommendation, that we continue to evaluate ourselves, but we do it in a way that we think will be more meaningful. Mr. Mazzone, do you want to comment at all? Did I capture it mostly?
I think you characterized it accurately, and what I'd like to be able to do with the board's approval is I'd work with Mr. Racine in the development of that document, and I'd present it to you, hopefully by the next time we meet, for consideration for the board's use.
And so we talked about doing that as a strategic planning committee, so we might loop Ms. Librera, who's also on that committee, in to review that. So feedback, what does everyone think about that as an idea? If we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the results that can be presented out at the late January board meeting to everyone, so that you can actually be able to review those results. I think it would be a nice thing to do after the reorg meeting, and as an opportunity with, everyone's who's going to have to execute on some of those things. But I think having this board do the evaluation now is an important thing to get everyone's feedback. So thoughts?
Are we going to have to do this through December, to complete it in December?
So basically the idea would be that maybe within a couple of week time frame, we'd put it together. And then we'd be looking at everyone completing it in, November, so that we can get the results back in December. And I don't know, I don't want to commit to saying that in December we'll have it ready to share with everyone in terms of the feedback. So I would say January, and I don't know if the reorg meeting's the right meeting. I think it should be at a full board meeting. So, I also want to be realistic. We have a lot going on in our lives, as well as with everything happening. So it seemed like a realistic time frame.
Good.
Any, yeah?
We have to do this evaluation, but you're going to make something first?
We're going to use that as a tool to create a survey, and it's going to have you evaluate yourselves with a lot of those questions, but we're going to add some questions in about the type of development that you would like to see as a board. You can't do that with the NJSBA tool. You can't change anything in that. So it seemed like double the work to have everyone complete a board self-evaluation from NJSBA and then give everyone a survey on top of that. So the goal is to integrate it into one thing that could be sent out to everyone. It would fulfill, a requirement that I think this board has set for itself to evaluate every year, even though it's not required, but I think it is a best practice. Does that make sense? So Dr. Racine's going to create a survey based on the eval, and everyone's going to get the survey and fill it out. So it's just going to be one survey.
Just one thought. I know that I'm the only board member that won't be here beyond this year, but it may make sense to do the survey with the full board that's in place in January versus doing it in November. Just one person.
I mean,
Can I comment on that? I think it might be good to, usually in a survey, you don't like to know who the person is, right? But if you say, as I leave the board, we'll figure out it's you. But I think to get...
It's going to be in all caps.
But as 6 years on the board, right, your comments may be important, but then we could certainly give the new board member the opportunity to, who's been at every board meeting for the last year, I think he has tenure as a board member already, give him the opportunity to give his thoughts coming in as the newbie. I mean, the more the merrier, right?
It is a rarity to say no to you, Mrs. Librera, but I think the idea was also, I always look at evaluation as we're evaluating our work over the past few months, so
Okay,
I
fair
think
enough.
having your, and everyone's feedback. But I agree with you that having the new board in January review, be able to make comments and talk about it and be involved.
And Ms. LeBrera, you're assuming they're going to have all the votes counted in Bergen County by the time January, by the time January comes around. You might be on the board till like February or March.
I have no doubts. Everything's going to be good.
Okay, any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay, hearing none. At 9:47 PM, we are going to open the meeting to the public for any agenda-related items. Anyone in the audience? Seeing no one in the audience coming up, do we have anyone on Zoom?
We have 2 people on Zoom.
All right. Does anyone on Zoom have a comment they'd like to make? Please unmute yourself. Okay, hearing none, at 9:47, we're going to close this portion of the open meeting to the public. We're going to move on to new business where action will be taken. We are going to run through this, so we're going to start with personnel. Mrs. Ahmed?
Okay, following motions, 1, Kevin Sanchez, resignation. 2, Elaine Lopez, resignation. 3, salary level changes. Level changes effective September 1st due to additional credits for SEP. Doesn't give a name though. Approve the following level changes effective September 1st to June 30th due to additional, Karen Clark, okay. 4, Bulldog Care Program Counselor, change your start date. 5, Home Instructor, as a home instructor for school in October. 6, High School Co-Curricular, as an advisor. 7, substitute teachers, the 2021 school year, Mervet Sedek, Kayan Ostad Hashimi. 8, Abby Rabinowitz to approve with pay or leave of absence under Family Leave Act, followed by a child-bearing leave with pay. 9, substitute teacher assistants, Mervik Sedek. That's right, to approve. 10, and that's, approve the following employee leaves as provision of Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Go ahead, should I name them?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments about those items? Mrs. Jones?
On the FFCRA leaves, do they have 6 people at home? Is that what they need to care for?
I can't answer that. That's confidential. I can't.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, Mrs. Ahmed, do you want to move those?
I'd like to move the following resignations, appointments in accordance with law.
All right, we have a second. Dr. Racine, any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to curriculum and instruction. Mrs. Jones?
Okay, there's 3 resolutions for board consideration that have been put forth by upon the recommendation of our superintendent. 1, uniform memorandum of agreement, which is with the police department and the Rutherford Police Department for this school year. 2, out-of-district placement, and 3, home instruction for 3 students.
Okay, any comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Mrs. Jones, do you want to move this?
Resolutions 1 through 3.
All right, we have a second.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Ahmed, any last comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly, if you could take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, next we have finance. Dr. Racine.
All right, we have 3 motions tonight. 1 is the approval of bills. Number 2 is non-public nursing revised. Number 3 is extraordinary aid revised. I'd like to ask Mr. Kelly if he can go over numbers 2 and 3, what the revisions are.
Yeah, the number 2 is the non-public nursing. That's a state program. The money just funnels through us to St. Mary's. And I don't know, there hasn't even been an announcement, but I happen to notice that that they did increase the award. So how this typically works is we enter into a contract with the Board of Health for the borough of Rutherford, and they provide all the nursing services for those schools. So that's... no, the academy was originally, as I understood, was originally going to close. It is still open for 8th graders only. Oh, and the second one is extraordinary aid. There too, they found some more money. So they put us in, so we got about $70,000, whatever that is. So we'll appropriate that into this year's budget. If I may add a couple things.
Yes.
We talked in the Finance Committee meeting last week about open enrollment for health benefits this year. There's been drastic changes to the health benefits program this year, where we used to have about 20 different options and the board had authorized offering about 6. Now we're down to 3. Everybody, one of 3. Every district, every school employee is entitled to one of 3 health benefit plans. Direct 10 and Direct 15 are the most expensive and widely considered the better plans. Those are still there. All the other plans go away. There's a new one called the Educators Health Plan. The reason I bring this up is that in the most recent contract with the REA, the last couple of contracts with the REA, the board negotiated that all new employees would go into Direct 1525, which now goes away. So we have worked to get all those people into the EHP, which is a little cheaper for them. It's a little cheaper for us. It's if you're in network, it's a very equivalent program, but it's been a major issue to get this thing off the ground. In fact, the state still hasn't finalized some of the details, and open enrollment ends this Friday. So we're still plugging through that. The other thing I want to mention, I sent a bulletin out to all the staff on Thursday or Friday last week, which I think you guys may get as well, about unemployment insurance fraud. We are seeing some instances here. It is not a Rutherford issue. It's a statewide issue. We are keeping an eye on our systems to make sure nobody's infiltrating them, and we have not seen any evidence of that. But we are engaging a consultant to help us work through unemployment claims on an ongoing basis, which will help us in the long run anyway. But this is an issue of some concern, because generally we have to pay whatever excess there is that we haven't collected from the staff as part of their salary deductions. So I just want to let you know that's out there, but we're taking steps to address it and mitigate it. Thank you.
Dr. Racine, anything else you want to mention about the Finance Committee meeting, or?
Let's bring it up. Yes. Yeah. Had I mentioned that we met last Monday to discuss our current budget status, the renderings we just saw, and the health benefits. So pretty much Mr. Kelly's gone over everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Dr. Racine, you want to move those?
Sure, I'd like to move items 1 through 3 in finance.
All right, we have a second.
Second.
Mr. Mazzone, any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Olati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, next we have policy. Mrs. Librera, do we have anything to report?
No report tonight.
I will be sending sometime this week. We just had updates from Strauss Esway. Okay.
Okay. Next, we move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Healy.
Yes, we did have a committee meeting on Monday, October 19th, and myself, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Sprayberry, Dr. Olati, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Paterno had a death in the family, could not attend. Mr. Kelly presented the capital outlay projects, which are smaller in nature, and we did review those. And I'm not going to, unless anyone wants a list, I'll not go over it right here. We then talked about the building and construction renovations, including the facilities, and the comments we did receive, including Mr. Conti's and others. And Mr. Hurley did reflect on those, and we did talk about, design stages and how that all gets done, and I think he discussed that tonight at length. So I don't know if we want to go into that any further here. The second part of that was, though, talking specifically about the Pierpont design and Union School and the high school. So resulting in, I believe, what Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly arranged for tonight with PSA. Mr. Sprayberry and Mrs. Jones, do you want to make any comments regarding? One other note, Mr. Sprayberry did ask Mr. Kelly for specific information regarding costs to the projects, and Mr. Kelly did. We have that in our hands tonight.
Yeah, tremendous sheet. Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Any comments from you, James, anything?
Good.
No, I don't have,
No, I think it was a great meeting. I think it was, it's good, healthy conversation, discussion, as much as tonight was as well. So, and thank you for the numbers.
I have a question. The sheet looks awesome, by the way. Well, I agree with you guys. Is there a way that we can see this with the other items like the architectural services, project management stuff on it, so that we can see the overall number? Because that's not on the sheet, correct?
I have some other things for that. But
Okay.
The point of this was to get the basic information on one piece of paper.
Okay.
That was legible. So
Okay.
let me
It's
see-
awesome. It's fantastic.
See what I can pull together.
All right, thank you.
Tonight, we do have two resolutions being put forth for review and approval. And the number one is, of course, the gymnasium addition and interior alterations and extra column repairs at the Union Middle School. And as Joe has provided the revision to the resolution that we received in the packet, the bid, lowest bid was submitted by H&S Construction and Mechanical for the amount of $7,183,000. And there's, based on that revision, you can read into the other parts. Joe, I'll ask you for some comments, but I'll read the second resolution too, so we have both to discuss. The second resolution being put forth tonight is for change orders, and they're listed for the science lab, high school science labs, Pierpont, Union School flooring, actually two of them there listed. So, Joe, as far as the, can we go into questions at this point for those two resolutions? The first resolution regarding H&S, there's like an addendum here which says alternate bids to be approved. Can you just discuss that? What are these, why do we have alternate bids here included in this whole bid tonight?
Well, we have alternate bids, and we really go aggressive on the alternate bids when we're not sure how the bid is going to come out. So if we think it's going to be close, or if there are things that we might be over the budget, we may want to take some things out, or if we're just not sure, we keep it, the base bid, fairly low and conservative, and then just use a number of alternates to get us what we really want. So some of the extras that may not be critical, but we do want them.
So
in this case, there were 9 alternates. One of them was designed, which is number 8. You see, we're not accepting that one. One of them was designed in case the bids came in over budget, we could remove something and bring it down slightly. Those alternates came in between, say, $125,000 and $200,000 last week. That would have been a reduction to the bid. That particular one, number 8, was to use a lesser I don't want to say quality, but a lesser cost roofing system over the new addition. Happy to report we don't have to do that. The roofing that will now go into the specs is equivalent to the roofing we have throughout the district, so it'll make it easier to work with, but it's a better system anyway. The others are all making, the other 8 are all making improvements to the plant. So for example, number 1, including LVT, that's the luxury vinyl tile in lieu of the vinyl composite tile. The luxury vinyl tile is a little bit more expensive, but it saves us a lot in maintenance and custodial work over time. So that, that's a plus. These are all pluses. We are going to the stone landing. I'm looking at number 2 now. The stone landings at the columns out front, those are those square concrete bases there. The plan's called to just leave them there and work with them, but we're going to pull them out now and then replace them. Same thing with the pilasters, which are that design feature that's on the wall behind the columns. Thought we'd try and just clean that up, but now we're able to replace them. Installing a sink and an eye wash station in the nurse's office, so that's pretty straightforward. Number 5, installing new awnings, drainage, and lighting over the gymnasium egress area. That's a plus. Number 6, I know you'd like this one, install a second scoreboard in the gymnasium on the wall opposite the first scoreboard, so again, another plus. Number 7, install variable air volume boxes. That's a control system for the HVAC system. Again, that's an upgrade. And then number 9 is to replace retaining wall and perimeter fence. Instead of, these things are old, so it's...
So, Joe, Mr. Kelly, the number that we are approving then is the $7,386,900.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That is correct. The base bid plus those 8. I will point out, so I left you this just for your education here. There were ultimately, I think, 55 bid packages picked up, which is amazing. There were 20 bids, as you can see here. And with 9 alternates, this took quite a while to get through all those packages, but we had a great turnout. I think probably virtually all of these 20 were there for the bid opening, so there was an interest. And as it turned out, H&S, who we're going with, is a couple $100,000 less than, it's well under budget, about $800,000 under budget, $875,000 under budget, but it was even a couple $100,000 under the second low bidder. So, so anyway, I just thought you'd be interested in seeing that. Nothing really there.
Yeah, Joe, in the process, for example, the lowest bid, is there any investigation that goes on? I believe we had talked about this before. There is some, as far as the lowest bidder, that they do comply for all state and...
Absolutely, yeah. I review them, the attorney reviews them, the architects review them, and the construction managers review them. So we all came up with the same conclusion. H&S is, they are an established company. They do have I forget what the exact terminology is, but the state has authorized them to work on up to $50 million of contracts at a time. Of that, about half of that is now, they're only about half capacity there, so they have $25 million almost of ability to take on more projects. So with this one coming in at 7.4, they're well within that. So, so yeah, there is plenty of that review going on.
All right, thank you. The second part of the resolution is change orders, and as listed, and there too, Joe, the question would be, are we, or Mr. Kelly, I should say, are we within our overage amounts regarding that for each of these projects?
Yeah, each of these has an allowance. So yes, we are within the allowance on all of these. The first one you see, the removal of the epoxy resin countertops, net of the Formica addition, as we've discussed several times, the epoxy resin countertops, it's an industry-wide shortage of these things. So we've kind of taken that off the table for the time being, replaced them with a cheaper Formica model just to get the labs functioning. And then we'll look into replacing those with the epoxy resin hopefully next summer. So that resulted in a little savings, a little addition back into the allowance. Bismarck, the second one there, We had one, I think, a couple months ago for the pipe. This is behind Pierpont School. Removal and disposal of pipe with ACM, the asbestos-containing materials installation. There's some additional costs with that. The third one for Union 4, additional concrete needed. As you remember, you approved change orders because the subfloor, the concrete beneath was much thicker, deeper than it was expected, so we needed a change order to get all that excess material out. And now we need a change order to get new concrete back in there. So that's what this is doing. The last one there, the almost $1,500, that is actually the closeout of the allowance. Since they are essentially done with that project, there'll be no more change orders. So that goes, the $1,495 goes back against the contract value. So we'll save that money.
Okay.
Okay?
Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Sperber, any comments, or you good? Okay. All right, so we're putting these forth for review and approval this evening.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Sprayberry? Any last comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Librera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Olati?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to old business now. Anyone have any old business they'd like to bring up? Mr. Healy?
Yeah, I do try and be quick on. I did attend the Kinder PTA meeting earlier in the month, and kudos to Dr. Valechko and Mrs. Coy. They both received some really nice compliments from the PTA council there and parents about how they're handling the situation and working with the students. So, the next thing was just to talk, I guess, briefly. You asked about just to have a brief discussion on the workshop, and I was able to get in, and I was, it's a wide range of subjects, and I actually was able to, I couldn't print more of these tonight, unfortunately, but the agenda at a glance really gives you a feel for what you may be interested in, but again, it's quite a range of things: educating the whole child, school facilities, 21st century learning, technology and cost savings, even COVID-19 and leadership. But you may encounter, you have to change your password when you get into it, and I don't know how many people are able to do it yet, but once you're in, it's pretty easy to navigate. So, and you have 1 year. They're on demand at this point, and I don't know if our newer board members know, but you actually have a transcript at the New Jersey SBA, which this would go to your credit if you log in and do some work on the workshop. So, you want to say anything else, Mrs. Jones? You have something?
That's considered the training,
Yeah.
that you get credits for. I also went on, and I just thought that it might be interesting to let me just talk about one of the keynote speakers was Anna Marie Chavez, who is the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National School Boards Association. And she spoke of her childhood days growing up in Arizona, going to Yale and becoming an attorney. She happened to have been a Girl Scout, and she made the point of mentioning that the great women leaders were Girl Scouts, the same as the great men leaders were often Boy Scouts. But ones like Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Mariah Carey, Laura Bush, Sandra Day O'Connor, Grace Kelly, Barbara Walters, but it was interesting. She was very good, very interesting, and the first woman of color to achieve that status. And one other one that was particularly interesting to me, I mean, I did a lot of them, but I'm not going to take up that much time. Jeff Gale, the Director of School Preparedness and Planning for the New Jersey State Board of Department of Education. He does fire drills and teaches that on safety for schools. You probably have heard his name. One of the questions that's been very difficult that superintendents and leaders in education have been worried about is how are we doing with fire drills and lockdown drills in the COVID, keeping the children 6 feet apart and so forth. And my understanding is we've been having them, is that correct?
Jeff Gale does a drill of the month webinar that I attend every month. And they go through what drills you can do for the upcoming month.
Right. And he also said that lockdown drills should take just as long as a fire drill.
You can't do a lockdown drill right now, but you can, there's ways, again, without speaking specifically to how we do drills.
Right.
The drills have all been changed to work within the parameters
Because
of.
we've been trying to get a waiver from the State Department of Education.
No, there's no waiver. You have
I
to do
know,
the drills. Yeah.
I know. But
So that's why we do the last Thursday of every month, I log in and we find out what we're doing, what's on the menu for the next month.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mazzone, for suggesting everybody get in on it, and Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, thank you for signing us up.
Great, yeah. I attended, I was able to go to one on negotiations, which was interesting, because it talked about negotiating on Zoom as opposed to being in person. I hadn't necessarily thought about that. Try to work to see if we can make some of the topics known to board members. So if there are any topics you're interested in, maybe we'll just list out the topics and send them out. And if you're interested, we can get you the link to that particular webinar so that you can view it. I actually do have access for a while. I will just comment and say that I did attend with Mrs. Ahmed the last Rutherford High School PTA meeting, and we both were there together and spoke about things going on at the end. There was a raffle, and you want to know who won the raffle? Mrs. Ahmed. So congratulations. It's coming to you. I had to do it. Any other old business? All right, hearing none. Any legislative updates?
No report tonight.
Okay, then at 10:13 p.m., we're going to open the meeting to the public for any agenda items, or any agenda or non-agenda items. Okay, no one from the audience? Anyone on Zoom? Please unmute yourself. Hearing none, at 10:13 p.m., we're going to close the meeting to the public. Nope. All right, seeing that there is no need for an executive session, then we will take a motion to adjourn. Ms. Librera, seconded by Mr. Mazzone. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. At 10:14 p.m., we are adjourned.